Although the streaming services
are as expensive as
really
cable.
fucking annoying, like Netflix in particular. But you know, like,
Oh, is your phone on airplane mode?
oh shit. Now it is.
Perfect. Well,
Yay.
now that we're on an airplane, my name is Jaron. My pronouns are he, him.
And my name is Heather, and my pronouns are she, her.
And we are your hosts of Typically Divergent Podcast.
Yay!
Happy Monday, everybody.
Happy Monday.
So, Heather, how you been? How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, get us caught up. What's going on in your life?
I don't know. I feel like just as you said last episode, where you know you were feeling like this back and forth with like the seasonal affective like sads and stuff. That comes and goes, but it does usually hit me pretty hard. Like post hot like winter holidays, like end of January through part of February and stuff. I don't know. I just feel like I've felt overall kind of like meh. But then like things in like personal life and like stuff I'm doing with Spencer, it's been really fun. Continuing to do like my painting and learning like learning watercolor techniques. It's definitely one of my current ADHD hyper focuses.
Are you using that new paper that you bought? Are you using that new paper you bought?
Yeah. Like I'm really enjoying getting into it, and it's something that I told myself I would get back into once I was done with school, like college stuff and like getting my degree and then doing training and everything else, and finally getting back into it. Like it's been so long, and like doing creative things like I've talked about before has really helped. And I feel like personal stuff is like good, and I'm having fun on the podcast with you.
Good.
And so like generally pretty good, but like I also just feel kind of meh at the same time. It's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 5 days from after this episode is released, we're spending a whole day together.
I know, I'm excited.
I'm so fucking excited.
Yes, that is something I'm very excited for.
Future Jether.
Oh my gosh, it's our couple's name.
Jether and Heron. Future Jaron and Heather, I hope that you guys are having fun this future
No, I like
Friday.
Jether and Heron from now on, please.
Yeah. My name's Heron.
And I'm Jether.
And our pronouns are they, them. And we are your host of this typical podcast.
Jether. That sounds very like I don't even know. Like I keep thinking of jorts.
Oh my god, jorts.
My name is Jether and I wear jorts.
My name's Heron and I wear hats. Oh shit. I'm so sorry.
No,
I forgot that there is something that I need to go turn off.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I hope that we're having a lot of fun this upcoming Friday. I'm really looking forward to us spending a whole day together.
Yeah, me too.
Do you want to go look at some plants too? Do you like
Oh,
plants?
hell yeah.
Fuck yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Plants, witch store,
Yeah, we're gonna go to
food, yummy food.
Yes.
Are
Are you interested in trying some vegan food?
Oh hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't mind like eating it and stuff like that. I'm not vegan exclusively, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We have a mental health topic this week.
Mm-hmm.
I did a significant amount of research.
Yes, you did.
Before we get into this week's episode, I'm going to discuss my tarot card that I drew for this week. And it's so ironic that you had said last week's episode that you seem to be drawing a lot of swords, wands, yeah. And I continue to pull the cards that I constantly pull. So for this week, again, we got...
The universe is like, Jether and Heron, get the fucking signal.
Yeah, get your shit together. And I know exactly what they're talking about. So I got the All Paths Lead Home card. And again, to connect with my inner self, my inner spirit, and my soul, and to continue to reconnect within myself to figure out what to work on, the things that I need to be working on that I know are intentionally important. Mm-hmm. And to stop looking at the external things in life that come in and bombard my little mental self, and
like the simple things, and like focusing on yourself and stuff. Yeah, I definitely feel the relation to that in the stuff I've been pulling too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, folks, I do apologize. We don't have a whole lot of chit chat this week because this week's episode is going to be very heavy on the research, and so we are going to be jumping right into it. But of course, there will always be your typical laughs and your typical toes.
Our typical toe taps.
So, we are going to be discussing magical thinking this week. And while doing this research, I'm learning that I learn best by watching videos instead of reading. So I did watch a YouTube video. The link for that will be in this week's episode's description if you want to watch that yourself. I would like to remind everybody that, again, we are not solely an educational podcast. We do like to educate, and neither one of us have any legal standing on licensing to discuss these topics. However, we are discussing how this relates to our lives and our experiences and what we have done to overcome those problems in hopes
Mm-hmm.
that somebody will hear this and be like, oh, wow, like I should really check myself on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, let's just dive right in it.
Yeah, let's go.
So, magical thinking. The information that is going to be told is also a mix of my words and the doctor's words from the video.
Okay.
A lot of this is going to be borderline paraphrasing, but I do think that every word that he said was damn near perfect on explaining this. So, magical thinking is the fairy tale ideological escape we start creating during childhood in order to remove ourselves from current states of unsettling emotions or trauma. Trauma warning, content warning for anybody who has experienced dysfunctional family systems, childhood abuse. Um, if you feel that that relates to you and that this episode might be a little heavy, please tread lightly
Mm-hmm.
or put yourself first and your mental health first and come see us next week. So if you are choosing now to step away, remember that we love you
Yep.
and you will hear from us next week.
Love you guys. Thank you.
So, by definition, magical thinking is the belief that one's ideas, thoughts, and actions or words or use of symbols can and will affect the external world that we live in. An example of this is children feeling solely responsible for their parents' emotions and reactions. A child taking on responsibility roles that are not meant for them, like taking care of themselves and not relying on their parents for basic needs and survival. It is akin to denial, but is usually used in a way to explain away denial that we aren't privy to in a subconscious way.
Mm.
So how are we feeling so far? Feeling a little a little exposed yet?
Yeah. Yeah, just a little. Like, it's very like that wishful thinking, right? And like just being like, well, this will just make this happen. It's
Yes.
kind of like forced manifestation without the work.
Oh, it's amazing that you say that because I do have something like that in these notes. So
Oh, and I didn't know that because I didn't read this one myself as fully.
this may also look like a superhero complex or the family savior or hero.
The older sibling
the
complex.
the older sibling complex that was not in the video, but we
Yeah.
we as older siblings are going to say that for ourselves.
Yeah, that's all over TikTok as the family savior archetype, I guess I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some examples of this can look like: if I cut the lawn, then my family's problems will no longer occur.
Mm,
If I do XYZ chores or tasks, then my parents will no longer struggle with ABC problems like
mm-hmm.
infidelity, abandonment, rejection, or addiction. And also, this is a reminder that giving your child age appropriate responsibilities is not the problem here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's also it sounds like it's the kid taking that extra on themselves. Like it's not the
Correct.
parent pushing them or giving them responsibilities. It's and I was going to say it can also be simpler things. Like I think back to my past and basically like um trying to account for the fact that my mom would make like complaints about, let's say we were even just in like a retail store and like
Mm-hmm.
make complaints about how she couldn't find something or like there wouldn't be anything, but I was finally at the age where like I had more critical thinking skills, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, like why don't you just ask? Like she would just get like so down and like put her emotions onto me like when I look back on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd be like, why don't you ask, like, but then she'd refuse, but she'd continue to complain to me
Right, as
and
if
be in a
you are the
negative
one that's supposed to be
emotion
able to
aspect.
resolve the issue.
No, I don't even, it's like she didn't have that expectation. She just wanted to have that negative attitude and like kept putting that on me. And I was like, in order to solve this so that my mom, so like I want my mom to be happy, right? Like I love my mom. I want her to be happy. I don't want her to have to complain. I want her to be able to find the things that make her happy.
Yeah.
So if I solve this problem for her directly and take it away as an issue, so I would be like this kid that would go around and find like retail workers to help my mom, or be like, do you have this but in a size this, like,
Right.
and
Telling
I'd
mom
be
you're gonna
like
go look for
10,
something for yourself.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also so I think of it also in the way of like, well, if I take care of this like behind the scenes, then maybe my parents will fight less, or if I take care of this, like maybe my brother won't have to be exposed to this,
Right.
like that's where it's hitting me personally.
Yes.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
I fully understand and feel that as
Yeah.
well.
And of course, it can be the bigger issues you talked about too. Like, certainly there can be addiction, abandonment, infidelity stuff
Yes.
too.
And magical thinking is different from actual manifestation in the sense of manifestation is the core ability that we all have to create the reality that we wish to have by utilizing your energy to send that into the universe, along with doing the work and receiving the benefits from your hard work. Magical thinking is not that at
So,
all.
doing the work versus like magical thinking is like, oh, if I
It'll
do
just
this, like, it'll
happen.
just happen.
It'll just happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jinx. Magical thinking will have you using your mental energy to expect these things to happen for you without the effort of hard work. Also, believing that a life changing moment will positively impact your life and solve all of your problems, like winning the lottery, or, quote, if I just get this, then everything in my life will be perfect. This can also look like feeling solely responsible for other people's emotions or
Oh,
the reasons.
not what I just mentioned,
Right.
literally.
Or other people's emotions for their reasons of not returning, say, a phone call or not speaking to you if there is no clear reason as to why the level of communication had changed. That is me, like, all
Mm.
the fucking way.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That's a lot of people.
yeah. That's why like it's easier for me to like start a friendship with somebody where not that like we breadcrumb each other, but like we're not immediately texting each other every day, because then I'm like, oh crap, if this goes on for like 3 days straight, then the second that I don't get a text message the next day, I'm gonna feel like something is wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Or the taking out other people's emotions, like you said, other people's problems then become your problems, and it's your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to fix them. Something my therapist and I are always working on.
Oh yeah. Same here. Same here. Yay. Go therapists.
Yay, therapy! These ideations start in early childhood development before puberty and can manifest into other issues in adulthood. Childhood trauma can and will have the capability to overdevelop and even stunt developmental growth of different aspects in your emotional and mental maturity. Such people with childhood trauma can develop characteristics like, quote, being the superstar employee at their job, but unable to manage conflict, or avoidance, such as, if I don't feel it, it will go away. And that is me to a T. At least it used to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, like trying to just like make it go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think when we talked about careers, like the amount of times that my boss would come to me and be like, "You're doing a really great job." And it's like, "I'm just doing the job that you expected of me."
Yeah.
But I would constantly go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if I didn't, then a target is on my back. Whereas like the entire team could not be going above and beyond, but somehow that's my responsibility
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
This is actually very legitimate when it comes to current pediatric psychology. I actually took some continuing education related to my career. There's an organization, I can't remember their name, but like they actually help to raise awareness for this, but they've been studying how different childhood traumas
Yeah.
actually, how they have effects on the brain and can actually, stunt development in other areas. So like what you're saying has actual medical scientific basis. It's not just like theories. They've looked at brain scans of children who have gone through, unfortunately, like more like on the serious side of
Right.
traumatic events, and looking at how like the brain matter has changed, often permanently.
Yeah.
So
No matter how old you are, trauma will change your brain.
yes. Oh,
And is
100%.
and it's more, and like you were saying, it's way more detrimental for children, because that the entire point of being a child is developing
Yeah,
that
everything is very
muscle.
malleable. It's still growing even more. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where was I? Mental magicking. Magical thinking can also appear in other mental disorders like OCD, anxiety, and even forecasting. And forecasting is, if I think about it happening or not happening, then it will or won't. And we'll get into
Mm.
that down the road.
Like superstition.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
As children, we are able to learn and understand cognitive, factual, concrete thinking, like, if I'm good, then Santa will come and bring me gifts.
Mm-hmm.
During the developmental stages, young children are vulnerable to abuse around causation. An example of this can look like, Sarah's birthday party is ruined because of you. Or, it's your fault things are not right or working correctly. Or even, I can't make mom and dad stop fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Also included, I'm just not interesting enough for dad to spend time with me.
Mm.
As we grow into adulthood, our inner child will pop up during stressful situations that aren't in our control and can look like, they must not be interested in me anymore. My friend is having a tough day, and if I had just spent time with them last week, they wouldn't be going through this.
I'm immediately thinking of like even like friendships where like if I haven't like texted someone back in a while, or let's say I even forget, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm a terrible person, and like they probably are gonna hate me because of like past experiences. Like it's like that inner, and I like how you explain like the inner child, because we've mentioned on the podcast as well as like popular media is like the inner child and inner child work, and like what does that actually mean? What does that feel like when that's happening? Like what's the definition of all that? And I like how you termed it as like it's thoughts popping up in your head based off of past traumatic events and things, particularly in childhood.
Right.
But you don't, without working on therapy or processing it, you don't make the connection that it's from childhood necessarily.
Right.
But it's like this abstractness that has resulted from it to make you think the way that you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about something that might not actually be correct.
Right.
Which is where the magical thinking is coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
But one that would come up in my head a lot was, if my partner doesn't respond to my text message or my phone call within a specific amount of time, then they are cheating.
I didn't have it with cheating, but I had it with like something was wrong or they're mad at me.
Oh, yes. That one for sure.
Yeah. So we had to take a pause, which allowed me to like regain my strength to talk about this, but I was getting teary-eyed and almost like getting emotional with the last quote, which is why I still wanted you to say it. Because no lie, that was exactly what would play over and over, like almost to like an OCD level, like during one of the darkest periods of my life,
Mm-hmm.
right as I was getting out of, well, deciding that I needed to get out of my abusive marriage.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, because of course, at first, when I found out about everything and like, it happened in a way where he told me that I was shitty and I was the reason why he needed to be out late and all these other things. Like we haven't actually talked about all of this on
Blaming
this
you
podcast,
for his
but yeah.
actions.
Yeah, and so like that, and even in other prior abusive relationships,
Mm-hmm.
I had those same types of thoughts. Like, I must be not a good human or not a good person,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why, like, I'm being treated this way. If I was just more interesting, if I was a better girlfriend, if I was a better wife, if I did more things for this person, or if I just did what they asked, they wouldn't get mad at me or they wouldn't hurt me. Like, it's just, that one definitely hits home. And I'm very glad that well, one, I don't have to have those feelings because I'm in a healthy relationship.
Right.
But I no longer get those feelings even in like non-romantic type of relationships or things. And if I do
Oh, yeah.
start to feel that thought coming up,
Uh-huh.
I know how to like be like, nope, that's not what we're doing anymore.
Right. Because magical thinking is also a way of distorted thinking.
Yes,
And
exactly. It's not always good. It's not always like, oh, if I just like
no.
it's often related to these very traumatic things.
Yeah. And sometimes even with magical thinking, where it can stem from can also be completely accidental. Like how we can accidentally gaslight children when like when they fall and hurt themselves. And then, you're like, "Oh, it's okay, you're fine." And like we're not intentionally denying their feelings or their hurt. We just don't want them to be upset.
Hmm.
But by doing that, like that is the definition of gaslighting.
And kids will be like, "Oh, I'm just supposed to think that I'm okay." And like
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep, it's unfortunate that like even minor things, and that is not to say that anyone who has done that is a bad parent, right? Like that's
No.
a
They're never intentional. It's not
well-known tactic
intentional.
that people try to do because in the moment they don't like to see their kid cry, and it's like, it's okay, it was just this, like don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like that is a very difficult like gray area, and as
Right.
part of the disclaimer, it's like we're not here to tell people how to parent, but it's that even in itself can be something that just causes disordered thinking in the
Yeah.
person that it's happening to. Like, I agree with you, and it is technically gaslighting.
Yeah. When we're not here to say our parents fucked us up, but we are here to say that like we know how we were raised.
Yeah, relationships and parents, and yeah.
Yeah. So there are actually 4 types of magical thinking and how they can manifest into our adult lives. And the first one is, if I ignore it, it will resolve itself without my actions. And this is similar to essentially blind optimism. This is the most commonly seen example. Individuals with this system of thought are generally avoiding the big emotions that come with change. And I think we see it in television too, where like essentially it's dissociating, and like people are like, "Oh, I had this out of body experience, like this didn't happen, so and so is not really dead." Like they just continue to move on with their lives like it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It is choosing to ignore the facts and believing that things will eventually work out themselves. Children with parents who have substance abuse disorders and or addiction will think to themselves, it'll be this particular family gathering event that they'll be sober for.
Mm-hmm.
Another
Mm-hmm.
example is that a child is unprepared for a school assignment and expecting their teacher to be lenient on their grading or their expectations, and the teacher is to or expecting the teacher to come in and help the student, like the teacher is going to be the savior.
Mm-hmm.
Another example is when a child will deny that they are fine after a domestic violence situation and that they're just going to be happy for mom and dad from now on.
I'm seeing this more from my abusive relationship past. Because at first I was like, I feel like I was more the type to like become like what I was saying before earlier on, like taking the actions to account for others so that like you can fix the problems for everyone else. Like that I would say is like overall more me. But then when I think about it, like I really lost myself and a lot of my through my 20s because of the number and severity of like the physical and mental abuse that I had gone through, like
Mm-hmm.
in different relationships, in each of them being different kinds and ways of abuse, because each time I would say, "Oh yeah, that's not going to happen to me again. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
bad. That was toxic and I'll move on." And of course, never going to therapy for it either, and like being in school and being busy. And then but I think that I became like a very passive, like inward person when it came to those relationships, and being like that avoidant, like if I'm just the quiet, attentive girlfriend or
Mm-hmm.
housewife, like and
Mm-hmm.
like the literally like the 1950s aesthetic
Yeah.
from a mentality standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll be safe and they'll take care of me and it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yet also be a breadwinner at the same time and have a career.
Right.
So the worst part of both.
Tell me how that's supposed to happen again.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Right.
But somehow I was in it.
So magical thinking moving into adulthood can look like ignoring their issues in domestic partnerships, interrelationships with other adults, or ignoring their feelings. Again, if I just avoid it or ignore it, it'll go away. I used to bounce back and forth with this, like the avoiding, but then also like knowing that something was going on with like a previous boyfriend of my many past romantic involvements. Um, I would be like, well, I can fix their problem, but they're not telling me what their problem is. So like I know what it has to be. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of emotional about this part.
Are you gonna be all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Adult survivors can have dismissal magical thinking about people in their lives that are generally toxic, unhealthy, or abusive. This includes friendships, partners, or family members. They can also ignore medical problems, like they can ignore external issues. And something that I would like for everybody to ask themselves is what was modeled for us as kids if we are putting off
Mm,
serious problems until the last minute.
fucking not getting medical attention or even help like for yourselves.
Yeah,
And I
I
feel like prior generation, like particularly boomer parents, are terrible at that, and that's why we're all so bad. Like I'm my own worst patient, literally.
well, I have had a thing happening with my heart for a couple of years, and I have yet to do something about it because the second I said something to my doctor, and she was like, "Well, we'll have to do an echocardio scan," and that scan alone cost a fuck ton of money, and I was like, just to find out what's wrong with me, I literally said to myself, "Fuck it, I'll wait until something is going on, and then we'll just have to figure it out." I know that's not I'm not that's not very good advocacy for self care and
No,
self
but you're
love.
being honest about your experience, and I think
Correct,
that's still important.
correct. And I'm not here to like blame either of my parents. However, one specifically was a medical professional, and I remember being like ill and being told, "Well, until you have a fever, you're throwing up like you're going to school."
Mm-hmm.
And so now, as an adult, the amount of times that I have in the past, I don't do this anymore, especially because of COVID, and I've learned to take care of myself. But in the past, if I didn't have a fever, I'm still gonna fucking go to work and be miserable at my job because some part of me is still sick. But I would say, well, if I don't have a fever, then nothing's wrong. And like, clearly, buddy, you need to fucking rest. Another dismissal property can look like ignoring or dismissing major life events or people and can easily go into the mindset of I'm not here, this isn't really happening. So this is the disassociating that I was talking about earlier. And again, these are survival characteristics from childhood that are showing up in adulthood.
I think it's like as you're reading it, not only like, I was talking about how like, oh, I relate to this more like from my abusive past, but some of the stuff that I'm currently working on in therapy has to do with the stuff I've been almost like avoiding myself. And you like talking about this, I'm like having the realization that like some of this is something that I actually experience, but I'm like ignoring the fact that I am ignoring things or like dismissing things or like
Mm-hmm.
disassociating, and that some of it actually truly has to do with stuff with my mom.
Well, as your friend, let me ask you this. Are you ignoring it or are you just choosing to put it off to the side because it's not time to, you don't have the energy or capability to handle it at this very moment?
No, I wouldn't say ignoring it because I am addressing it in therapy now, and I
Okay.
had to get through fighting so many other fires to get to the point where I can get to talk about some of the deeper issues from my own childhood, rather than like first it was like getting out of my marriage, then it was like unraveling the rest of my abusive past and
Yeah.
like working on me acutely, then getting diagnosed with ADHD, and like now I'm at a point where like I can work on the things that I want to work on that have
Mm-hmm.
been like kind of like deeper, truly has to do with me, and less so on like external stuff like relationships,
Yeah.
like stuff that's deep because it's more difficult, because I do care a lot about my mom. I love her very much, but there are a lot of things with that and with that relationship, as well as like again the stuff with my eating disorder that I'm working on. So like that, those are like my big things that I'm working on right now and just starting to. And I find that I tend to want to find excuses and find ways around
Not putting her response.
talking about my mom because it is so hard.
Yeah.
Like I'm like literally stimming by twirling my hair right now and like having anxious behaviors that haven't come up for me in a long time, even in therapy, let alone I'm doing it right now in the podcast. And I have no problem sharing that with our audience, like, and stuff. It is what it is. Like, it's okay. Like, if I felt a certain way, I could, I could have you cut it or something. But
Okay.
I have no problem in that, and I think it's I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something that I, again, want to work on anyways. So I'm glad I'm having some of this experience right now. Actually, it's
Yeah.
helping.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Since you are comfortable talking about your mom, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. With Kim, I used to think that, well, if I was just skinny enough, then I would get the approval from her that I needed. Or if I was clean enough, or if I just did good enough in school, or I did a lot of regulating my mother's emotions. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I
Toe tap of
toe tap.
support.
Toe tap for support. Pretty sure. I honestly, maybe it's just because I did the research and had my emotions through it while doing all of this stuff that I'm
Yeah.
feeling like I'm level-headed enough to talk about these things to keep myself centered, but also maybe slightly disassociating. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do agree with you though with like that research part, because I
Hmm.
often do a lot of it too, and it's like you feel it when you're in it, and then when we're like presenting it in the podcast, like you'll re-feel it through new genuine like conversation between the two of us,
Yeah.
but like you've already gone through the emotions of processing how you're gonna write out your notes for today.
Right.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any second guess on if I'm genuinely speaking on anything or if I'm just being cold about anything, I promise I'm not. So number 2 is anxiety management based magical thinking. This is personally for me, this is where a lot of mine comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Children's imagination is the first opportunity for parents to help them manage how to deal with fear and logical thinking in reality. So back to like what we were talking about earlier,
Mm.
the example that is commonly used for this type of thinking is if I keep my feet off the edge of the bed, then the monsters won't get me.
Oh my
And why
gosh.
did we
I've
all as
done that so
humans? I
much.
still do that as a human being.
I do too. Okay, so I
Or like
have
running up the stairs when it's
I was
dark.
just gonna say,
Toe tap.
I have
If
this unnatural fear that someone is gonna fucking chase me like no tomorrow and like gobble me up
and why
if I don't run the fuck up those stairs. And okay, I also have this thing with the dark where like if I'm either living by myself
uh-huh.
or by myself, like let's say in the here and now, Spencer's out of the house and it's just me, or he's already gone upstairs to bed
Hmm.
and I'm the last one. It's like I gotta shut off the lights in order.
As
And
you're
if
going
the
up the
and if there's
stairs
a certain
out
room
of the
with no
house.
light on it, but you gotta shut off the one behind it, you gotta go put that one on first
Yep.
in order to. Oh my god.
Yep.
Oh.
Why do we all as humans have similar experiences like that? Because it's not like I wonder if that's
Like it's like maybe
like
almost like a cross cultural thing.
like in our I wonder if it's like in our DNA. Like how they believe
Yeah.
that the nails scratching on a chalkboard was potentially the sound of a predator like way back in the day.
Yeah, I also think kids in general have a tendency to like, even if parents are doing a good job at like protecting them from watching a scary movie or things like that, like there are even like kids movies, right, that have like scary elements that like just let the imagination run wild, and kids will have nightmares from kids movies. Like I
Yeah,
used to have nightmares from certain children's movies. And then like I used to actually like horror stuff as a kid and would try to like actually
same.
sneak around my parents to like find ways to watch the stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I thought I was like the coolest person, and like I was this responsible little child because my parents let me watch Jurassic Park when the
Right.
first came out on VHS. My parents pre-ordered the VHS, a special edition from Blockbuster.
I that puzzle I put together last week
Yeah?
is a puzzle from Blockbuster.
Oh my god,
It's
yes.
downstairs. I'll have to show you.
Yes. So real quick though, so this like 90s reference here. Forever, even as like a teenager and young adult. So my basement, like half finished kind of thing, at my parents' house, and it like goes around in a circle with the stairs in the center.
Okay.
And so when I would shut off the lights, I had this irrational fear based off nightmares and having watched like Jurassic Park very early in life, that I thought like raptors were gonna run around from like the other side and
Mm-hmm.
come and like just take me by the ankle and like
Oh.
shred me to pieces. and,
Gross.
and I have kept that memory in my head Still today, like, I think it literally, like, it's the thing that my imagination first goes to
Uh-huh.
when I get scared of the dark is, like, the raptors,
Oh my
because they were so
God.
smart and they would hunt those people down.
She said, I'm 34 years old and I still think them raptors are going to get me.
I do. But I love dinosaurs at the same time. Like, I'm one of those kids that loved those dinosaur documentaries.
Oh my
But you
God.
best bet I
You're
was still scared
so
of the
cute.
dinos at the same time.
Okay, so
Okay, sorry, go
it's
ahead.
okay. So fostering a child's imagination is wonderful for their brain development and even sometimes conflict management. However, the previously mentioned example can easily be the first time that we all started using this anxiety management based magical thinking as children. Another example that I can give is because children have an age appropriate black and white thinking and they hear their parents discussing money in a stressful way. They recognize that money equals not to be stressed or survival. Money is needed to fulfill my livelihood needs, not money is essential to living, but sometimes you just don't have the extra money to play with. Later in life, they can develop obsessive thinking or obsessive compulsory thinking about money or whatever the previous childhood struggle was. Obsessive compulsory thinking is a way of survival, but it can also be dangerous when it takes over your life. My sister, not to call her out, but she has been saving every penny that she's ever found and or been given since she was like younger than I was ever getting money
That's my brother.
for chores. And she said one day that she had this many figures in her savings account,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that she was broke. And I said, I have never seen that many figures in my bank account, and I am broke.
Yeah. It's like, and it's interesting because, like, my brother's the same way. And as you're talking about this, I'm like, I understand that too. Like, there's a lot of stuff in my past with my mom and, like, kind of talking about, like, different money issues and stuff that my dad was trying to help, like, other family members with. And there was disagreements over that. And I was old enough, unfortunately, to I still shouldn't have been involved in any of that or have
Yeah.
seen any of that, but I became very involved and hyper aware of everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And then I like worked on protecting my brother from that, but it's actually something I've talked about in therapy and like have overall like not necessarily resolved, but I just have an explanation for why I actually hate talking about money. I hate the concept of money itself and I dislike having to think about it, which leads to issues with like me actually like working on budgets.
Yeah.
And it leads me to issues where like I almost like overspend on other people because I'd rather just like give it away
Yeah.
and like not deal with it and not have it on me because I don't and I know that's like sounds crazy. And then like my brother's literally the
Don't
opposite.
discredit yourself. It's not crazy.
Thank you. But like it's just it's kind of it's a weird thing like I almost like it's like being I'm dissociating myself from the money problem
Yeah.
by just like not wanting to think about it.
Yeah.
It's easy to ignore when you're in a healthy financial situation where you don't have to watch things, but when I do have to watch things more or like things aren't as good, it can be a problem because it's very hard for me to actually address and look at.
Yeah. Some other examples that I just thought of. Oh, well, okay. Well, an example from my childhood, for me, not my sister, I remember Kim telling me at an age that it was, looking back, it was not appropriate to be telling your 11 or 12-year-old son, but like, now that your father and I are getting a divorce and I'm going to be living on my own and I'm not working anymore, we're going to have to make some changes in the monthly expenses because I can't afford these things anymore. And so I remember being like, all right, well, I better go buy some VHS tapes and start taping all my favorite shows because you're telling me that we're not going to have cable anymore.
Yeah, like there's a level of transparency that can be important, but it's like how you phrase it and then like if parents are having to present problems to kids, and again, disclaimer, I'm not an expert in parenting or parenting education. Um, but I do think that it's helpful, and I've found it helpful when I have talked to kids myself, that like they know and can understand more than what we usually think. Or
Oh,
they'll
yeah.
at least try. So if you have to be transparent about a problem or issue going on, such as that,
Hmm.
then going into detail about like, okay, but like this isn't going to affect this. This is what the you have to go the step further to say this is what this actually translates to.
Yeah.
This means that basically like we're just not going to go out for dinner every week and we're
Right.
just going to cook more home. You would have never thought about the cable thing if they would have gone into that extra detail, right? Or like
Right.
also ask your kid like, you know, how do you feel about that? Like, is there anything that I can help like answer for you? Because, you know, I know that might be hard to hear.
Right.
Like
Also,
asking them.
only if it's age appropriate stuff.
Correct,
Like we're
correct.
saying. As one who grew up with who has religious trauma, if I am not a sinner and I follow this book, then I won't go to hell, theoretical hell,
Mm,
when I die.
mm-hmm.
And as long as I stay good all the fucking time, everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and that becomes obsessive. Like,
Obsessive.
and people who have religious trauma tend to be extremely hard on themselves for even small mistakes that are like, I don't know what they would like, you know, like minor sins basically, because like
Oh
each
yeah.
little thing, right? Like,
Right.
and the more extreme the religion that you were part of, usually the worse that is.
Right. These children can start to develop obsessive patterns. For example, if a child is in an abusive home and that one time I did XYZ, that one time
Mm.
I wasn't mistreated. So I'm going to continue doing that so it won't happen again. Or I did the dishes and that was right before the time my parents resolved their problems. So I'm going to continue doing the dishes so that they don't have problems.
Mm.
Possessing personal items can also ignite this thought, like a rabbit's foot or a cross.
Uh,
For example, it can look like if the whole house is completely spotless, this one hit me really hard because of Kim.
ooh.
If the whole house is completely spotless, then
Yeah.
the parents' emotions from external conflicts out of their control will be balanced out and they will be in a desirable mood for the rest of the family rather than teaching the child to recognize when these things are or aren't in their control.
Dude.
That is literally that is her to a T.
I just like that's a lot of people. I do feel like there's a cultural thing with like cleaning and that being like related to like I don't know, like your elders will be like okay with you when they weren't okay with something about you the 20 times before.
Did your mom also clean the house before guests?
Yes.
Guests meaning family.
Yes.
Guests would come over, the house would be clean, and then after they'd be
And my
there,
dad. Yeah.
then we it would be cleaned again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had a
And
cleaning lady.
yeah.
She told my dad, "There's no reason for me to keep clean your house because it's clean every time I come here." And he said, "Just do what you have to because if I pay you and your presence is here, then she'll be fine."
Yeah.
Contaminating thoughts can also be taught this way, such as everything will be fine until so and so moved into our home. Did I just skip? Oh, yes. Okay. So that can also look like, well, everything was fine right up until this event happened in my life. Notice
Mm.
how these all have a way of explaining things away with the use
Oh
of
my
magical
God,
thinking.
yes.
Instead of bringing them towards you, you're using them to to think them away and can be used in a way to survive or navigate stress with reality. Abused children with magical thinking is using this as a tool to manage anxiety because they're lacking support from their own caretakers.
Oh my gosh, that's literally I think like that's like a tactic that my therapist literally has used of like redirecting me being like or is it like actually this? And I'm like, "Oh my god."
I love when they do
I think
that.
I think it's like cuz I was magical thinking.
Yeah. Erica last week asked me a question. She goes, "Do you think maybe this was happening?" And I looked at her and I said, "You know me too fucking well." And she goes, "Well, Jaron, I do know you." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You know me better than some people."
Yeah.
Adults with magical thinking can also take on anxiety-based superstitious thinking that doesn't serve them, like taking on fundamentals of different religious beliefs or new age based thinkings in literal sense instead of taking on their responsibilities for their mental problems such as hypervigilance or safety problems like fawning or codependency.
There's a difference between doing things related to a faith that help you enact um, positive actions in your life
Correct.
and a positive lifestyle that relates to witchcraft, that relates to paganism, that also relates to even to Christianity,
Any faith or
Hinduism,
belief system.
Islam, like any and all religions, anything that has to do with literally the word faith, having faith in
Yes.
something like, in actuality, I was going to talk about this eventually, but I think it's a good point to bring it up now. The word faith itself, in what we're saying and what we're explaining, and you're doing a really good job of it so far, like, you
Thank
could
you.
immediately go to that, like, well, is faith magical thinking? Is that a form of magical thinking? And like there's this like philosophical debate I've seen online where, like, in some respects, kind of yes, like, but at the other end of it, one could argue that, like, if that faith leads you down a path to live a positive lifestyle, helps you get through things, could serve as almost like a form of like therapy, like, meditation, doing things that we know even have like scientific backing that
Right.
can help you cope with daily life human problems, help you live a code of general morals and ethics that helps the rest of humanity. That's awesome.
Right.
Where it becomes a problem is when that faith leads to disordered thinking. Like, oh, if I don't have my crystals on me, that means I'm going to get abused by my partner.
Or I don't have to actually put forth the effort into being a kind person. All I have to do is go to church every Sunday and I'm
Yeah.
forgiven.
But you're actually a murderer. Like, you've murdered people and they're in your
Right.
basement or something. Like,
Right.
I mean, that's like I mean, but that's stuff, right?
Right.
Like,
Or you're
that's,
judging other people.
yeah, and their
And
lifestyles, but you claim that you are like
free of
this
judgment.
wonderful, awesome person who's free of judgment. Yes,
Right.
correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at
Right.
that.
So, and we fully so like what you said about the crystals thing, we fully understand that people look at witchcraft and new age and spirituality as like woo woo stuff. I get that because there is, just like I think there's a lot of bad Christians out there, there's a lot of bad spiritual people out
Oh,
there,
absolutely.
you know?
There's a lot of new age spiritual people who are like ex-Christian and then like adopt the judgmental aspect plus like this like very rigid, it has to be this way and according to these rules, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for the
It
same weird ironic reason that they likely left the Christian religion. They
right.
then like bring those things to like um a like their faith around
Right.
witchcraft and then tell other people they have to practice that way, and it's like, look, that literally was like not the point.
Right. You literally just took off one coat and put on a different coat, but you're
Yes.
still a lizard. I don't know
Yes.
why I thought
Yeah, no,
lizard,
no,
but
like
yeah.
that's 100% it. And like that's that's where like the negative part of like faith and where like that magical thinking like can be associated with that stuff is like not making like rational things from like point A to point B.
Contamination thoughts can in adults can also look like if I use the silverware at a restaurant, then I will get sick. Or
Mm.
my least favorite, my presence at this social situation will ruin everybody else's experience. And I feel that to the
Mm.
absolute core. I actually had a conversation with my future brother-in-law about this last time he was in the salon. Hi, Connor. I love you so much, buddy. We were talking about inviting people to certain functions. If you do not specifically invite me and say that I am a part of whatever is happening, I will assume that I am not a part of it because it's easier to go into it knowing that I'm not going to go versus being let down because I'm not actually invited. Because I think that my presence downs everybody else's time because I'm a bit more introverted. But I mean, and then I when all four of us were here, we all had a really nice time. We were all
Mhm.
very like extroverted mode, but it takes me time to get to that point
Mhm.
with people differently to be my authentic extroverted self. And until that happens, I assume me being quiet is ruining everybody else's time and everybody like I'm that guy that people are like, God, your husband is so quiet. And it's like, well, you should see him when like he's at home, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
all right, moving right along. Number 3 is clairvoyance. This is not to diminish actual mediumships, um, people with psychic abilities. This is simply intertwined with the prior to and comes up within when an individual believes they can predict the future because of an anxiety based around a certain situation. This can look like a child hearing a parent say, and I heard this so many times as a kid.
Mm.
Well, not this specific one, the next one, but I knew I needed to be out of the house sooner because now I'm late. The one that I remember the most is, you better tell me now because I will find out.
Mm.
When I was younger, after all of the times that I had been cheated on and abused by other men in my life that were supposed to be boyfriends or partners or people I could trust, I would tell the next one, don't you ever lie to me because I will find out, and I always find out. Don't cheat on me because I will find out, and I always found out. I always
Mm.
find out. And I wore that as a badge of pride. Like, you can't get anything around me. My mother would tell me, you better tell me the truth because I'm going to find out right now. And somehow she always did. Or other examples of this can look like, don't you think I already know what you're thinking?
Mm. Wow. Not only do I remember this from some of like things like abusive past relationship people had told me, but I'm like, I have vivid memories of my mom telling me like both of those last two,
Uh-huh.
like what you were talking about, but in relation to like so forced nap times. When I was got a little bit older, and the memories that I do remember,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't remember the really young ones, of course. I remember associating like nap time with like, I want to make sure my mom wakes me up for me to watch Batman,
Mm-hmm.
like the animated series Batman.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of times, like, especially as I got a little bit older, where I'm like, I am not tired. I'm not tired for nap time. Like, I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
tired for it. And so I'd like lay there and like try to do little things or like different stuff. And like my mom would tell me every time that she's like, oh, I knew you were up the whole time.
Yep.
I knew you were up. Mom,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually told me at one point, moms have special powers, and you'll know about that one day when you're a mom for your own children. And she's like, when you
because
have your own kids, it'll be this special power, and we'll talk about it again
because
when
I
you're
expect
big,
you
when you're an
to
adult.
because I expect you to repeat the generational trauma that I'm putting on you.
And I was like, and like, I was like, well, what's the special part? And so like, I would literally find tactics like to try to be quieter, and then it'd be like, yeah, I didn't like
To
it.
test
Didn't
that.
like yeah, that and then also like my mom would like still not wake me up for Batman, like which would like piss me off in kid format. But like,
Testing is a part of this.
oh my
Testing
god,
is a part of this.
oh my
I
god,
was like, I feel like I
no way.
wrote that down. I did write that
Oh
down.
my god. See, and that's maybe it's like it's I feel like I'm in therapy with you right now on the podcast because I didn't actually read through some of this and I'm processing it and I'm also like the fact that I'm having this like talking about this memory from
Uh-huh.
when I'm like 4 and 5 about like a parent being like, yeah, I know what you were doing. And like, I know what you were doing
Mm-hmm.
in your room. Even though okay, first of all, like, even like when I was a little bit older and like I would have nap time, the door would be closed,
Yep.
like the lights were off, like, and also I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't. I was just like laying there, or I'd find like one of my little like chapter books to read,
Yeah.
like with the little bit of light, like because it's the middle of the afternoon,
Right.
and I remember even like telling my mom at some points being like, well, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just wasn't tired, and it
Right.
was like,
But you weren't
but
doing
I was but like she didn't chastise me, but it was more like I felt bad because I didn't do the nap time how I was supposed to.
right. One of my favorites, again, sarcasm here, was I would be asked a question like, why did you do this or why did you say that? And I would give a legitimate reason,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be told, I'm tired of hearing your excuses. And I remember yelling at her when I got older and I was able to defend myself a little bit more. And then the bullied
Mm-hmm.
child started bullying the bully.
Yeah.
And I literally told her, I am giving you the fucking truth.
Yeah.
Do not tell me that I am giving you an excuse. That is the honest to God truth. And
Yeah.
she would still, that's an excuse. All right, well then you know what? Fuck it. Like, why am I even trying to defend myself?
You know what it
Because you don't
is?
believe me.
It's fucking power play.
Yeah.
It's all about power, and then like these
Reactive abuse.
and like they want to almost like they have give you that in to have an opportunity to like explain yourself or talk through an issue, and then they use it as a weapon against you, and then parents, it's the famous, it, it's literally the famous, well, it's because I told you so and I'm a parent, and when you're an adult things can change. But then guess what, the boomer parents still play the card of, oh well, I'm your parent. Like, okay, well, I'm a fucking adult now.
Yeah.
Like, but I do think that, like, if I magically had kids at like 25, 27 when my parents had kids, it's like, would you look at me differently? You know? But like, because I don't have kids, do I still look like the 16-year-old?
Yep. You will continue to treat me like a child until you die. A lot of our generation experiences bringing a child into this world, and then their parent will like then parent that child,
Yeah.
or then they continue to parent their adult child.
Yes. And very briefly, I do just want to give credit where it's due. I have actually had some of that kind of conversation with my mom and dad, and they have improved a little bit, but there is still a tendency to like pull those kinds of things, even sometimes with good intentions. And
Yeah.
I do try to set those boundaries now better, but it just sucks that it still has to be a thing.
It's like, you obviously don't trust your own parenting skills to believe that I'm capable of taking care of
Yes!
myself.
That was okay. Awesome. That is actually really good advice, because that was part of more of like the heavy part of the conversation that I've had. And now I just do little reminders, but that was part of like the heavy conversation part that I
Yeah.
had with my parents.
When when things like that happen with myself and Kim, I tell her, like, I've been on my own for 13 going on 14 years now. I do not need your fucking help. If I did, I would ask you.
Again, I'm sorry for the stereotype. It's just hard not to sometimes. If there's anything a boomer parent loves to hear, is that they were a good parent. There really is truth behind the concept of, look, you did good enough to lead me to this point where I can do these things on my own. Count that as good parenting and let it go.
Right.
Or you obviously don't have your own trust in yourself as that parent, like you said.
So, adult survivors of this can become very anxious around the fear of being able to predict the future events of hurt, like infidelity, loss of a loved one, loss of losing their career over a small mishap.
Yep.
Me every day.
Yep.
Again, this comes as a child hearing their parents say that they believed that they had this ability. When it comes to feeling and factual information, it's more difficult for these adult survivors to be able to separate the two. Adults with this type of magical thinking can also test the codependency of their partner.
Testing.
Yeah, like if he like, and this was my example that I actually put in here. If he called me back, then he wants to have this relationship with me, or if they communicate with me within a certain time frame, then they won't be able to be unfaithful to me. Maybe it's my hypervigilance, but when things are consistent in a certain way, and then I notice those start to dwindle, that because of my previous abusive experiences, that's always the first thing that I go to is,
yes,
oh, you're cheating on me. Like, all it takes is like, oh, I didn't get a good morning text message, or you didn't call me before you went to bed, or you didn't say I love you before you're off the phone, or I got love you, not I love you.
Yes, like basically the minute you notice something slightly off and you're hyper vigilant and hyper aware of those aspects, that like your partner is slightly off or a friend is slightly off than how they are and how they react with you,
Right.
it's hard not to be like, hey, so like, here's the thing, should I know about something else that's going on?
Yeah. I talked to my therapist about this long time ago, but I did bring these things up to her, and she said, you're afraid of future hurt. Again,
Yep.
your clairvoyance here. You're wasting so much life right now, and you could be missing out on really great things. And the risk and the reward, what comes with risking that those things could be a possibility, the greatest reward is that you have a wonderful, happy relationship or a life. But if you worry about it falling apart, then you're never going to actually enjoy it. And then, as one who has a history of self-sabotaging, then it will end up getting destroyed. So when that thought comes up, I just remind myself, like, all right, like that's your original distorted thought. Clearly nothing's going on. Look at all the times that, in this case, like Nicholas, because he is my fiance, look at all the times that he has shown you confirmation that like this is exactly what he wants, and that you guys are going to be together for a very, very long time. Okay, then I can calm myself down and then move forward. But like you said, communicating with your partner, and I think that's really great. And I know that not everybody has that with their relationships, and I know it's really tough, you guys. But, open circle conversations. One day we can talk about that. But today we're talking about magical thinking. So Number 4 is rescue-based magical thinking, one of the more common ways. And this one, I felt this way about Nicholas. Like, I thought if we just got back together, my life would be great. But then, no, the trauma resurfaced like it always does, and it had to be dealt with. So that's how magical thinking is no longer affecting my life because I'm tackling my shit.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Good.
This,
Proud of you.
thank you. This is betting on being rescued or helped from life struggles in the form of someone with the resources that they are looking for, or winning the lottery, getting a job that you want, or even having a relationship with someone where the individual or the relationship will bring on a fairy tale type of love. Feeling really called out here, even though I do think we do have fairy tale type of love, but we put that effort into doing that.
If there's anyone who's on Book Talk and likes to particularly read romance novels or fantasy romance, setting up them expectations on a more mature level than the Disney princess.
Right. And not the reality of it just being a relationship. Well, there will be hard times. Rescue-based magical thinking can also be geographical, and I used to think this too because I used to want to move away. Then
oh my
all
God,
my
not
problems,
me with my jobs and my career.
then all my problems will be gone. If I just move away, all my problems will be gone. This can also happen when an individual fantasizes about buying a home but doesn't put forth the effort in working towards that goal and just expecting it to happen for them. I used to something that you guys don't know about me. I used to tell all of my clients and anybody I ever met, my 5-year goal, my 10-year goal is to move away. I don't care. I just have to get away to Europe. Where do you want to go, Jaron? I don't care, anywhere but here. Through therapy, I've realized that the reason why I wanted to get away from Fort Wayne so much, not only is it because like this is where I was raised and like wanted to go to like a bigger city where I could be a part of the party scene, and knowing now myself that's not healthy because of my addictions, but I was just trying to run away from my mother because I thought if I get as far away from her as possible, then I can avoid going to the holidays, the birthdays, the shit that I wasn't strong enough to put boundaries up to say like I can or cannot do this. Because if I'm far away, then that's my excuse. Well, I just can't make it. Instead of just being able to set up those boundaries for myself and be like, I'm not running away from my hometown just to get away from you when I can just put up those boundaries.
Yeah.
And take care of myself.
Yeah. I think they're, in general, like, that's a form of magical thinking that I think a lot of people dealt with in, like, during 2020.
Yeah.
And perhaps, like, even in, like, current society, like, anyone who, like, feels burnt out in their job and in their career, like, oh my God, the amount of time spent disassociating, imagining what, like, my cottage forest life would look like, that somehow magically, okay, quote unquote magically, that I'd use that word, funny enough, like in this thinking, but have a cottage in like the forest that's away from everyone except I'm with Spencer and we're just living our best life, yet it also has internet and somehow we're able to make like a decent enough living to keep going on the basics. We have some chickens and our own little like,
and having a fantasy is nice.
Yeah, but like
it can't just happen.
Yeah, like it becomes like almost like a coping strategy when you're so severely burnt out and really like depressed about like perhaps like honestly I think it comes up a lot when you feel stuck. Yeah. Right? Like cuz you want to escape.
Yeah. We had talked about this a couple episodes ago that I had been like putting off my spiritual practices because I had magical thinking that it would just happen. And in my writing, I wrote in my most recent entry, I wrote, I've just been expecting this to happen, and that like my desire to write and create this book that I want to write will just happen. But it's not going to if I just sit around and wait for that book to write itself. I still have to do it. And I said that in my writing before I even did the research for this.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, look at that, just putting a little future Jaron seed moment in there.
Yeah.
For children, rescue-based magical thinking can look like wanting to be adopted by another friend's family. Same. An example of children experiencing rescue-based magical thinking by their own parents is if a family goes from wealth to poverty, and then the moment that caused their financial distress will now define them and their worth, and that their value is nothing until they are financially well off again. My mother's mother is one of like 4 siblings. She's the only one that got married at 19 and had her first child at 20 or 21 years old. And her siblings went to college or married somebody that went to college, and they are all very like well off.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to this family tree, we're the poor because we're not living in big fancy houses with all this money and
Mm-hmm.
going on all these trips. And money has always been the biggest thing on this within this family dynamic system. In my mother's head, she needs to have the biggest house and the nicest things and the prettiest clothes and the latest stuff. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like money is not going to make your guys' life happy because clearly like you don't have it and you don't know how to have it happy. You don't know how to have a happy life without it.
You know what's so interesting is my grandmother,
My grandmother.
my grandmother,
My grandmother.
my grandmother on my father's side had a lot of the same kind of mindset, but that side of the family tree comes from a lot of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So much wealth that some of the books that I own from my great grandfather
Mm-hmm.
are a specialized, like, curated full library set from the 1930s. That man had money for books in the middle of the Great Depression. And I'm talking about a library that took up an entire room. A lot of the stuff that I remember of like my experience with my grandmother, like I had like really good experiences, but a lot of the stories that she would tell me like were so hyper focused on like the past and like the family history and the
Mm-hmm.
money and the where everyone came from and what they did and like the culture and this like the classist shit.
Yeah.
But there was so much focus on money because also her and some of her siblings, they like all like kind of like squandered the wealth. You could kind of see them as like the equivalent of like not super well known, but like irresponsible heirs and heiresses
Yeah.
of like a pretty decent fortune.
Uh-huh.
My dad was like the golden child because he got things back in the form of a profession. Still not even to the level that like my ancestry had, but got it back up there and like, oh, and Heather's going to, get a doctorate and like all of these things. And like, it was always about like the class and the money
Yeah.
and like hyper focused on it. And like the exact things that you were saying about your own family, it's like the same attitudes, but coming from the opposite side of the spectrum. Like they both have their major issues.
Adult survivors can experience this way of magical thinking with partners you've got this. Once you've got one, it's all smooth sailing after that, or even with careers or life opportunities that will just happen. Adults with this type of thinking will often look at others' successes and assume that those things just fell into that person's lap and that their turn will come too. Lastly, they will attribute to their stuck places as a place they will now have to live forever instead of having a process or flow in their life, such as bad marriages are forever, shitty jobs are for a lifetime. The belief that these things will, quote, just happen or, quote, never happen are both qualities of rescue based magical thinkings. And
It's
an,
that feeling of stuckness.
yes, and there was like some examples like, and even as something as simple as like you're never too late in life to like reinvent yourself or go to school or like things of that nature. So I'm sure most of you are probably thinking, well, okay, Heron and Jether, what the hell do I do with all this information? Well, we would like to tell you there are some writing prompts that the doctor gave us. Notice how you may have subtle or largely based aspects of magical thinking. Learn and understand all 4 of these different ways and check in with yourself to see how any of these may have come up in your life. Understand this way of thinking is not always negative and was at one point used as a way for your child self to be able to survive. But now it's time to acknowledge that this way of thinking is no longer necessary for survival. We'd like to remind everyone that having a thinking system like this does not make you less than, and your survival as a child was not your responsibility. The way that you came up with magical thinking was a way that you came up with in order to deal with your reality, and that's the magic in it.
Oh, I like that.
And please don't blame yourself for having had this way of thinking. You are human. And if you look at us with any respect after everything that we have said this evening, and we have clearly said that we have experienced magical thinking, then hey, like, we're all in this together.
Together.
Something, something, hand in hand. And you and me. You guys, we're not alone. You're not alone. None of us are alone. So, what do you guys think? Let us know. We don't have, this isn't a YouTube video, so I can't say, put down in the comments. But if you follow our link tree, you'll be able to be a part of our social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We have a private group on Facebook. About 2 weeks ago, I finally put up rules and regulations for it, so that it is a certified safe place.
Awesome.
7 days a week.
Awesome. Yeah, and
Bitch
I know, like,
ass witches.
in the past we've put, like, stuff on there ourselves, but, like, we actually want to encourage people to post themselves in the community. It can be a place for people to ask questions, talk about things, talk about stuff that they've experienced from the podcast, like,
Look for resources.
yeah. And
It's
you can post anonymously too, right? I believe.
I wonder. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I saw that there was a thing though, as an option though, that you could post anonymously. So
Yeah.
I'm like pretty sure that if there is anyone out there who wants to, like, you know, talk about their experience, like, you know, we obviously talked about our own experiences as we went through all this, and if you followed along and did that, and you want to, you know, talk to others, get resources and stuff like that, like, we encourage discussion.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. We love you guys.
Yeah.
We really do. I know we say we want to hear from you guys all the time. We truly do mean it though. Like, we're whores for validation.
Yes, we are. We do like our validation.
Yeah.
But I think also, like, if there are things that are really, like, striking home for certain people, or people in general would like to hear more about a certain topic, or have us, like, kind of come back to something else, go into more detail about something, or really want us to get to a particular topic within, like, you know, the mental health bucket, right? Like,
or even anything in general.
yeah,
I'm
like,
even
please
willing
let
to
us
take
know.
I'm even willing to take on a true crime. If
Oh, I'd love to do, like, a special.
if someone's like,
That'd be
"Hey, I
fun.
want you to talk about this true crime." All right.
Yeah, like, we'll research it. We'll get into it for you, and
Heather will
you-
research it. I'm
you'll-
not doing that.
You'll hear about it from the Jether and Heron perspective.
Heron and Jether.
Heron and Jether, sorry.
It's okay. You said
Jether. You know, I said Jether and Heron. Heron and Jether.
Oh, it sounded so weird.
Okay. The Heron and Jether perspective. The Heron and Jether files.
We could make that a series, you guys. Like, like almost like asking us for advice. What's the oh, fuck? What are the names? Jether and Heron's perspective. Dear Jether and Heron, what's your perspective on this?
Yes.
You can email those questions at typicallydivergentpod@gmail.com, or follow the link tree in our bio or the description of this episode, and you can email us directly from there, or come be a part of our little group on social media.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun on TikTok, you guys.
He really is, and it's really cute.
I am not that, like, I am
Your
a
stuff
lip
is
sync
funny.
queen, but like I've been lip syncing before RuPaul's Drag Race was popular.
Yeah.
So
Brittany.
yes, bitch. Oh, one last thing. I went on a deep dive the other day with social media.
Oh no, did you do the Brittany deep dive?
Yes, people
Oh
think
no,
that
it's
she's
really
dead.
it's really intense, especially on TikTok. Her TikToks are like,
Oh, she got
there's-
TikTok?
oh, she's had it for years now. Like, yeah, it's yeah, it's been a thing. It's been part of the thing because, like, she always does the same thing, and people are like,
Yeah,
kind
the
of that
spins and
blink
the
twice if you're like in need of help kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's all this suspicion about, like, what's going on, but
Yeah.
it's such a great area. I have a hard time. Like, people just also want to be in Britney's life, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, she needs to just figure it out first. Like, let her live her life. I don't know, man.
Nicholas and I were having this conversation last night, and I straight up said, America needs to get their head out of their ass because my woman is in trouble.
Yeah.
She is. I know she is all of our queens. She is my queen. Well, everyone, thank you so very much for hanging out with us this week. We really appreciate it. We love you so much.
Love you guys.
And you'll hear from us next week. And this is us signing out.
Bye.
Bye.